One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave. I'm Dave.
And I'm Dave's other person, Marla.
That would be Marla. Anyway.
I'm Marla.
Oh, man. Well, you know what? We have a great show planned for you guys today. Right up front, as we welcome you to the show, we want to remind you, text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. Well, we've been anxiously anticipating this week's and next week's show. It's a two-part series called How to Manage What is Clearly the Impossible. Our story as it pertains to mental health challenges in our family is pretty well documented. We have two adult children that deal with brain differences, as we like to call it. As of late, it has become increasingly difficult to responsibly balance our relationship with our oldest daughter, and sometimes it happens even with our son. Our guest today is Doug Green. He is a licensed therapist, and he is going to help us find that balance that we are so desperately looking for. So a lot of pressure is on Doug. If Marla and I leave today unhappy,
Doug, we're coming to your house until you work it out for us. We hope you cleared out a room.
Well, Doug helps kids and adults find their own voice so that they can live the lives that they deserve. And he's going to help us find that voice and find that space to live the life that we deserve. When we come back,
no pressure.
We will be talking with, or actually Doug will be talking with us today, because it's going to take the format of almost a therapy session. Not almost.
It is.
Technically, it will be. And so we will now turn our show over to Doug Green as soon as we come back.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot. Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
All right, as promised, we welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave, Mr. Doug Green. So, Doug, one thing we want to remind you of, make sure you talk right into the microphone so that we can hear you.
It's very flexible. You can do fun things with it, like whoop, 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 whoop.
While Marla was on...
Yeah, so don't be afraid of it. Yeah, the closer you get, because what happens is
it moves to you.
Yeah,
so
everybody always really wants to hear what you have to say. So what we get, usually the only complaints we ever get is we couldn't hear, because we want to project into the microphone.
So we didn't really want to let the cat all the way out the bag, but we want to let everyone know that we did describe some of the things that we're going through with our oldest daughter to Doug. And the reason why we did that in advance is so that we don't have to get in so much information and detail about her diagnosis or what she's doing or any of those here, because the focus of this show really is to find some space, some mental and emotional space where Marla and I, especially Marla, can actually get to some sense of peace and sense of a rest, so that she can, and
Stop
so that we
hopeless.
all can live more productive lives. Doug, did I say that right, or did I mess anything up?
Works for me.
Okay. Well,
So,
Doug, we're in your
to-
hands now.
Yeah, welcome to
the
Mental
show.
Health Mondays for sure.
Well, thank you very, very much. This is a thrill completely. I don't even know where to start. This is so good. But, you know, what we usually start with as therapists is, what can I help you with?
Right. So let me
What's going on?
So I'm glad you asked that question. Dave kind of gave a little leeway. I was even questioning myself before I came in today, and I thought, are you really a crazy person for even putting on makeup and going through all this? Because it's gotten to the point where it's almost like overload for me, where even when I'm not wanting to cry, I find myself crying. So basically, I'll give you just, I think that our issues are a little bit different, and for me, I have been what I like to refer to in 34 years of marriage, March 25th, I'm boots on the ground.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so when I say boots on the ground, I have been a steady physical presence, even though I definitely you'll never hear me say that we're not equally invested in our family, because we are. So it's just so happens that what he does took him physically away a lot.
Of course.
I would say
And
overall now
continues to.
and continues.
Yeah.
So, through us finding out, the trickery of what has happened in our family, I will say, even as a parent, is between both my son, who's our firstborn, and our daughter, which we've raised them all, but biologically, that I had Moniece when we got married when she was 1, but we've known each other for a lifetime. That the trick was that both were not diagnosed fully until they were adults. Right. So you didn't realize what you were actually, you were trying to manage all of this this uneven and this in some cases behavior that was beyond my explanation.
Well, to be technical though, I think some of the diagnoses that they received as older adults, once they became adults, from what my understanding, and Doug, maybe you can help, it's inappropriate to diagnose children with some of these issues.
100% in agreement with that.
So they were sometimes anxiety, and then bipolar, and then depression, and then it goes, and finally you get to where
you get these fads. And recently, childhood bipolar has been the fad diagnosis. And then for a while it was autism. For a while before that it was ADHD. And the fact is, some of those you can find some in childhood, and be correct. Childhood bipolar, I really would question. People
but why
will
so?
say, I'm sorry?
So why so? Like what? So as a therapist,
Because we change, and most diagnoses apply to every kid. And try get a 2-year-old and tell me what his diagnosis is. He's acting up, he's acting crazy all the time. Sure. Of course he is.
Which would explain sort of why when we were getting these diagnoses, sometimes I'm like, man, I'm not sure if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Do they just need a spanking? Sort of just what's really going on here?
I won't go there. But I will
I'll say it for you, Doug.
the disclosure on Mental Health Mondays, Dave is putting words in Doug's mouth. Go ahead, Doug.
But I will say, yeah, there are certain issues that literally don't come till later. There's no child with schizophrenia.
Right.
There's a thing called schizophrenogenic, which means you were born with a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia. But it shows
But we're not going to give you that label.
And there's no way that you can, and someone
can't.
putting that label on would be a fool.
Yeah.
You can't.
So, no, it's that later on, generally the story is there's some trauma that occurs that somebody goes into being a psychotic, schizophrenic.
It triggers.
And so we know they were schizoprenogenic. But to call a child schizophrenic, if they say they're seeing ghosts, I'd take them at their word.
Right.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Right.
And similarly, bipolar's questionable. Kids get depressed. And all that.
It's tough being a teenager.
Boy, we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, and every teenager goes through phases that fit our personality disorders.
Which why at the beginning, because Marla's mom was also a mental health professional, she was chief of nurses for the VA for their mental health ward, and And the issue for me, sometimes I was just pretty much going along with putting the kids in therapy because for me, like I said, I was like, man, well, it's hard for me to, I'm going to say, okay, so I'm just not the bad guy here, but, you know,
Right.
I'm not sure if this is necessary.
Right. And maybe it was and maybe it wasn't. Now, therapy, I'll say what I do, really, I almost never put diagnoses on them. And I'd say most child therapists, I hope, don't. But they really do is try to help the kids grow through what they're doing and grow to the next stage of their life. Something's stunting their growth and help them get through it. And maybe it's because they're depressed and you can help through that. Maybe it's just they're having trouble making sense of something. You know, let's say the most common issue I get is kids whose parents are divorcing. And they just have to work out. And the whole world doesn't make sense the way it did. And you're going to have to get them to where it does. And then they're fine.
So that's a good question. You know, to be honest, because of our daughter, the oldest child, her aversion to the diagnosis, she kind of has through the years, she's now 35, has kind of been picking and choosing almost what she will broadcast about her, diagnosed. But what I wanted to ask you was, is the diagnosis something that matters at all as far as the understanding of the behavior? Because I honestly felt like when she was diagnosed, she was 21, almost 22. And I felt
When
like
she was diagnosed with
her latest,
right.
and
that we're aware of.
right, and,
That we're
and
aware of.
right, and at the time we were giving privy to, you know, we had permission to be in therapy. But the other point that I'm making is that at that moment, I remember thinking, a moment of blessed that I opened a can of worms where most people never get the can open.
Right.
And I was like, oh my goodness, look at this. I got the lid off. Oh my God, what am I going to do with all these worms? Because then the worms are coming out of the can and they're all over the place, but I don't know how to contain the worms. I don't know what to do with the worms. I've just identified a problem, but it doesn't solve anything.
No.
And that is where we're going to come back to talking about. That's the first place that I would like your help as a licensed therapist as to how to be able to actually approach that, an understood diagnosis without making it overbearing on the child,
Right.
the adult. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned with more with Doug Green when we come back.
Thanks.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
You may have heard us extol the value of talk therapy when it comes to maintaining your mental health. Many people, however, may have a difficult time understanding the difference between a psychologist and a therapist when starting their search for professional help.
A psychologist is a therapist, but every therapist isn't a psychologist. Confused? Allow us to clarify. According to BetterHelp.com, psychologists have a degree in psychology and often have taken advanced studies in the same field, including doctorate or PhD study levels. They may also research topics that interest them along with their colleagues or as faculty for higher education facilities. Their job is to diagnose patients and clients and determine treatments based on their observations.
Therapist can encompass any number of different professions, including social work. The term therapist has often been used to encompass social workers and a variety of counselors. Because of this, they may hold a degree in various fields, including medical doctors, PhDs or master's levels, or even other state-issued licenses. A therapist functions is different based on their area of expertise and their level of qualifications.
There are therapists who can help you with every aspect of your mental and emotional health. If you or anyone you know needs help with finding an appropriate talk therapist, please feel free to contact us here at Mental Health Mondays.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together,
It's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
So I have a lot of questions. I just ended with one, and I'm going to allow you to please expound on that. But my confusion is I've run out of ways to be effective.
Right.
Don't mention that my son is a different person than my daughter. And he, so for example, our son's bipolar 1 with schizoaffective disorder. When he was younger, he was diagnosed with anxiety. I don't think he ever got a depression.
Well,
ADHD.
right quick, you might wonder why we talk so freely about our son, because he cooperates with us at a level
He's okay.
that he doesn't
That's
mind
great.
us sharing that. Matter
Which
of
is
fact,
just great.
he had 2 therapy sessions today
Right.
already.
So what I'm saying is, this is the point. I don't. There's so much different information that I'm now drowning in, desperate grabbing for straws to be effective. And the crisis, flat out right now, and I have to say this, is absolutely between me in particular and my oldest daughter.
Right. So the big thing, and I'm going to start kind
Okay.
of backwards from that, but it's just what your show is about altogether, is this stigma problem. And there is this issue, and people hear the word mental illness and they think, oh, you have a child who's mentally ill? Well, then you must have done it, or there's something wrong with you. And they don't realize, when you actually get to real diagnoses, how common it is. And as we mentioned, teenagers, well, pretty much every teenager is going to go through a year of being depressed. Maybe acting out a lot in a way that seems like borderline personality disorder. This is normal. This is absolutely normal. A mother, I don't know if you went through this, but so many times giving birth, you did postpartum depression.
I did with one, with the oldest child. I did with 2, but with Moniece, it was acute, but it lasted, I could say honestly, probably about 2 weeks in total. And then I was
Okay.
like, all right, get it together.
Yeah.
My mom helped me, and
And there's that, and that's great. I've known people who got hospitalized because they went psychotic
Right.
in postpartum depression.
Wow.
Turned
And
to
after that,
psychosis.
it turned around. They got totally better and were totally fine.
Now,
for
is
the
that
rest of their
because
lives.
of
Chemical
endorphins and chemical and levels
Yeah.
in the body and the bloodstream
and
and blood
I'm
chemistry?
not an expert on which chemicals it is, but absolutely, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but
And don't let me
I
take you off
had-
topic. I tend to do that sometimes.
It's okay.
It's
I do
okay.
it
He's
too.
often
That's the
concerned
danger.
about, are you planning to have a baby? As he's concerned sometimes about his own feminine
Well,
health.
I'm not sure about my new wife. Just joking.
He had a vasectomy. Good luck, lady.
And there's that.
But anyway, so bringing you back,
Okay.
just because this is super important, that my greatest drowning feeling is and has always been, it's just gotten more intense with the issues with the kids, to be ineffective, because that's my only desire.
Okay. So my next thing, where I'm going to sound like I'm getting off topic, but
No.
I am not. I'm a geek, but I'm not exactly this sort of geek. But when this issue comes up, I always go back to Star Trek II, the movie with the one with Ricardo Montalban in it.
Yes.
And you remember that one?
I
It's
do.
good.
I'm a Star
he's a
Trek
Trekkie.
fan.
Okay, then you know. And the beginning of the movie is there's this young woman who's taking her. You realize eventually she's taking her exam to be a spaceship commander, and it's a virtual thing. She's being put in a situation where the ship is being attacked, and she tries everything she can think of, and eventually, no, comes up and no, your ship was destroyed, and she says, "I failed. I can't believe I failed. I really thought I got it right." And they said, "No, you passed." I said, "What are you talking about? The ship was exploded." And they said, "Yes, we created an impossible situation to see how you deal with it. How would you handle yourself as a commander?" And you actually did a perfect job.
So what that sounds like, Doug, if I can interrupt for just one quick second, it sounds like then the issue is more of what's the most important thing to deal with, and what
Yes.
things can you let go of?
Yes, and there's that. But there's the one part that I'm going to go back to Star Trek
Okay.
too. And she says, "So you mean no one's ever passed this?" And they said, "No, no one's ever succeeded." And so they said, "Oh yeah, there's this one guy, Captain Kirk. He did it." She says, what do you mean? It's impossible. And they say, we know, but somehow he did it. And later in the movie, she meets Captain Kirk and asks him how he did it. He said, well, I figured out that the whole thing was impossible. So I went in and reprogrammed the computer and
Hilarious.
changed the text. So my point
Please give me that brain scan.
Yeah. The bad news is you guys are her. You can't reprogram the computer. This is the hand you've been dealt, and everybody with the issues I talked about and so many others, everyone with a veteran in their life who's suffering some sort of trauma. You know, you probably know this, that there's a veteran suicide every 80 seconds in this country. It's insanely awful. Mental illness is all over the place, addictions, all this stuff. Anybody dealing with it, there's what you can do and what you can't. And the craziness that we all slip into, including us therapists, is realizing, wait a minute, I've got to be able to fix this. I've got to be able to fix it. And the fact is, no, you can't. So when you talk about being effective, it's really important to say, what can I do and what can't I do? Because that's what's going to keep you sane.
And I'm on the brink, too.
And I will say that, well, Marla gave her perspective. I think that from my perspective, that is something that I almost naturally do. If there's something that I can't deal with, I break it down into this is what I can handle. And some of these things are just going to go by the wayside. When my, well, I won't go into that story, but even when I deal with not just my kids, but, you know, my grandson, and just realize that there's certain things come along with certain perspectives and certain environments that you might have to deal with as a human being. And because of that, I can't hold that person responsible and accountable to something that they can't possibly know. And so then I have to say, what's most important to me? Do my kids feel like I love them? Do they feel like they can depend on me? And those things are first. Do they have a healthy idea of when they do something wrong and I have to discipline them, do they feel like it's in love, or do they feel like I'm angry and I'm attacking them? That kind of thing.
I'll even jump in there and say, you may act totally from love and they may not see it.
And and that's not up to you. That's what I was going to.
Yeah. And
their perspective is theirs.
And I think that my honest confession is that because I woke up to an introspection and a reality and a truth in myself about where I had come from and the deficits that I carried as a young mother. Like, I had Moniece at 19. And so in my circle, which is kind of my resentment now, is, man, I was so desperate to be effective. Anything that was of love that I could trust, I was willing to implement. And I have been a liquid, and he to me has been a stone. And I'm not mad. I'm not mad at him, but I'm a little bit resentful over the fact that, you know, not only have I morphed to become all these things that everyone has needed, but I'm the one that is the attack. You know, my oldest daughter is always has been in full attack of Marla. Facts. We both can at least agree to that. And I want to address how I can manage that within and in dealing outwardly when we come back. That's a super important thing for me to sort through with you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to have more with Doug Green. We'll be right back.
All right, it's time for the poll question, and Marla is already dancing. She's got that kind of queen tut. I wouldn't say king tut just out of respect, but she has that kind of queen tut.
You know you have to change a lot of things, right? You know that in real estate, you can no longer is no longer legal to say master bedroom or master suite.
Well, I am your master.
It's the main, okay.
And we go to our master's bedroom.
And this is why there's heaven.
Anyway, Marla, what was the question last week? Because I wasn't here. Why don't you remind us?
One God, not Dave. One God.
What was the question last week?
Last week's question was, due to COVID-19 pandemic, the number of adults in the United States experiencing mental health symptoms has increased from 11% to what percentage? Now, our esteemed guest last week, Aubrey Peoples, on her episode 2, did answer this, and she answered it correctly, but we have to give Doug a chance.
Well, the options are 14%, 25%, or 31%. The question, again, is due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of adults in the adults in the U.S. experiencing mental health symptoms has increased from 11%
To what percentage?
percentage?
14, 25, or 31?
I'm going to be just as annoying as I was before and say it's all a question of how you define mental illness, because I'll say 100%. I think 100%.
Okay,
Everybody has dealt with
so
it.
now,
If you include grief, if you include paranoia,
Right.
terror, or wanting to just punch that anti-masker down the street in the face, whatever you want you have, yeah, we've had it all. So I'm going to go with the high one.
So-
I'm going to go with the 31.
oh,
Well,
okay,
that's
and
a good way to
exactly-
hedge your bet.
I was just about to say we won't be asking Doug the next question because Doug has taken our poll and he's added his own percentages.
Dealt
Doug
with
is
it-
doing Doug.
Dealt with it through his own internal lens and came out with the right answer. The right answer is, of course,
How did he do that? It was
31%.
It's like a cul-de-sac answer. It came right
kinda,
back
he
around.
kind of did a Euro
It's weird.
step on Marla,
Just
threw
weird.
off, and came back.
All right,
I just picked the highest one.
Let's see if he gets this. In 2019, before the pandemic, 11% of the U.S. adults were diagnosed with anxiety or depressive disorder. 1 year into the pandemic, that number grew to what percentage? 25%, 32%, or 40%?
From 11%
To
it
25,
grew to
32,
25, 32, or
40.
40%.
Yeah, and that means when you're into the pandemic, we're also talking 1 month after the inauguration and January 6th and all that stuff. So 2 months, I guess. I'm going to maybe I won't say 40 because we're talking about who got diagnosed. I'll say that middle one.
But we'll
All right,
have
we
to
won't
give you
know,
that
but
answer next week. So hold
Tune
on.
in and see if Doug maintains his money
Remember, text the
from
word
Poll
give.
Jeopardy.
Text the word give, GIVE, to 818-698-1021. $1 today keeps the stigma away. Back to our discussion with Doug.
You see what Doug just did? He added a whole nother category. Doug, you should be the pole dancer. I got up here, I'm dancing and
You don't want to see my dance.
all right, so on point. I think that's where I need the greatest amount of help because, one of the things that has my daughter has successfully been able to do is to recast. I know the reality, but she has a public voice, and she's been able to recast, the truth of my involvement, whether she receives or not. It's not about that. It's all blame. It's all, and at the same time, two parents having raised the same three children, she literally praises and upholds, and her nickname is that her dad is the savior, and right, those literally Dave is our savior is a quote, and so I find myself feeling like, well, wow, as a parent who was connected and who made an actual choice to sacrifice everything. I don't have I have a lot of dreams, but none of them could be actualized because I made the decision to put them first. And that meant all of them, meaning he never had to worry about what he was doing for his career and travel.
Right.
It wasn't, wait, get here, you come home. I did it. So the bottom line is, and with all the troubles that have been there in various stages from day one, especially with her, our issues with her started when she was 4. Yeah. And so it's rough for me because, I don't feel crucified inside my family because we know, but the level of public disdain that she's been able to, based on her perception, but they're not factually true, that it's killing me because I'm like, man, where do I go with this? How do I and when you push me on a wall, my personality is to defend. That's my personality, which I've had to subdue because I've learned in my marriage that maybe this is not the best way. So learn that, learn peace, learn quiet, learn silence. Don't always, why do you have to get her to admit this is a lie? This is coming from, and I let all that go. And then once she got to be, okay, well, then you want to be a liar, be a liar. I mean, and I won't challenge you. But at this point, it's gotten to the issue that it has become dangerous. And I don't know anymore. I'm heartbroken.
Yeah.
but I have to go to my default position because it keeps me alive.
Now, Doug, before you answer, I'm going to say that now we're getting to the crux of the matter. And as we come to the end of the show, because we're now at the end of this particular episode, I want you to kind of wrap up where we're going to lead into for the next show, because that's when we're really going to deal with the nitty gritty. So go.
Okay. Since Adam and Eve, or whoever you want to say,
We'll say Adam and Eve here.
relationships have been difficult. What happened between Adam and Eve's kids in the first chapter where they're mentioned?
What do you mean? You mean Cain and
Cain
Abel?
killed Abel.
Yeah, of course.
So relationships are tough. And what you're describing is an exaggeration of what every other relationship is. I'm sure there have been times you guys have just wanted to just strangle each other. And look at you today. You're doing great. But she's thinking, still
Maybe the
do.
strangle.
Still do.
My neck is pretty strong,
throat,
Doug. My
maybe?
neck is pretty strong.
Strangle, but no, maybe eat your mic.
But I'm
Maybe.
saying this is what, at some level, we're just saying this is what love is. And love is dealing with what a person is and who they are and all that. And I'm not saying that solves anything, but just what he was saying earlier, coming from a place of love, if you know you're coming from a place of love, that will help keep you centered and grounded.
Doug, that sounds like you're really saying that if you want to love somebody, you can't just love the good part. You got to love everything about them, or maybe that's not the person for you.
Yep.
And that's easy to do with the
Relationship,
husband
isn't it?
and wife, or a significant other
Or a
type
puppy.
relationship, but it's almost impossible to do with the child and it is what it is. And so, with that being said, we thank you so much for
And we encourage you. This conversation will continue. So we will be continuing the discussion in episode 2. So don't miss it.
As I was saying, we want to thank Doug for joining us and
Thank you.
giving us some advice, and he's really going to dial that in on the next episode. You don't want to miss that one. Join us next week.
Episode 2 with Doug Green next week. See you guys.
Thank you.